What's up YouTube? This is LizardJ21 here, and today I'm going to show you the major UI differences between iOS 6 and iOS 7. First things first, let's start off with the home screen. On the right side we have an iPhone 3GS running the latest version of iOS 6, and on the left side we have an iPhone 4S running iOS 7 Beta 1. So you'll notice the first thing is that the icons look completely different. Now all the icons have looked the same since the first ever iPhone OS, iOS 1. However, in iOS 6, they've been given a new, more clean, and kind of artistic look. On the home screen, the way you search for items in your iPhone as well as folders look different too. For example, in iOS 6, you have to swipe to the left to bring up the Spotlight search. However, in iOS 7, you just simply swipe down and you could search from there. Folders look different too. In iOS 6, all you do is simply open a folder by tapping on it and it gives you a simple animation like that. However, in 7, when you open a folder, it gives you a different unique type of animation, and folders that have multiple icons in it, such as this one, can have pages. Next, we have the notification center. It is toggled in the same way by pulling down on the menu bar. However, in iOS 7, you have a more translucent, blurred background look, which adds depth. First of all, you'll notice in iOS 7, it'll tell you what's going on today based on your calendar appointments. You could scroll down, look at what you have scheduled, as well as access your stock ticker. Everything here is fully interactive, and it'll even tell you what your schedule looks like the next day. Now you can also move between tabs in the notification center. Simply by hitting all, it'll bring up all your notifications that you have currently. You could scroll down and access them just like in iOS 6. However, if you hit missed, it'll display only your missed notifications. In iOS 6, all you have is one simple page to scroll down that displays anything that has happened on your device. Next, we have the lock screen. The lock screen looks completely different from the original iOS 6. If we unlock our device here, you'll see we get a completely clean display. There's nothing intrusive about it, and it's very open and clear. We still have the same camera shortcut on the bottom as we have in iOS 6, just right there. And to access it, all you have to do is swipe up, just like in iOS 6. However, as you can see, our slider is kind of hidden. That is because you could swipe anywhere on the screen to unlock the device. Rather, in iOS 6, you have to actually touch the slider to unlock it. This gives you the ability to unlock your device anywhere on the screen, so it's easier to access. You can also access the notification center, as well as the control center, whereas in iOS 6, you were not allowed to do any of those things. Animations also look slightly different. In iOS 6, they were very basic. However, in iOS 7, they have improved them slightly, but it's not something that makes a huge difference. Let's talk about multitasking. Multitasking came out in iOS 6, and since then it's kind of gotten outdated. Before, you'd simply double-click the home button, and your most recent apps would show up. You could simply tap on it to launch it, and you also would have to hold it to close an app, just like so. Now, with iOS 7, all you do is you simply double-click the home button once again. However, now you get app previews, so you could see what the app is doing at a current state. To close it, all you do is simply swipe up and it'll close. This looks much nicer than this type of multitasking. And you're probably wondering, well, how do I get your volume controls and your AirPlay? Well, with iOS 7, they added a new feature. This new feature is called Control Center, and all you do is simply swipe your finger up from the bottom of the screen, and it will bring up several controls that you could easily access. Starting from the top, you have airplane mode, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Do Not Disturb, and Rotation Lock. You also get a brightness slider, which a lot of people have been waiting for, as well as your music controls with AirPlay. You also get a flashlight button. When pressed, turns on the LED on the iPhone. You will also be able to easily access the clock, calculator, and camera from this menu. You could close it by simply swiping down or by pressing the home button. So those are what I think the biggest UI changes to iOS 7 over from the previous versions of iOS. However, now let's take a look at what different applications look like running in this new OS. The best part about the way they laid out iOS 7 is it looks very similar to iOS 6. However, it feels so much more different, but it still performs in the same way. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and open the phone app on both devices. and you'll see it brings up the dialer. Now, in iOS 7, it looks completely different, but it also performs in the same way. For example, the buttons are all in the same spot. You could still access your various different menus on the bottom, such as your recent calls, your favorites, voicemail, and contacts. Everything is in the same spot, it just looks a lot different. Now, the camera. Go ahead and open this up on both devices once again. And you can see they've made some minor improvements in the camera. Instead of having one little switch for photo and video, now you could swipe the entire bottom of the camera application to change modes. Now we're in video. Now we're back to photos. And then they have something new called Square, which allows you to take photos in a more cropped mode. Maps look pretty similar in iOS 7 than they do in iOS 6, but they've made a few interface changes which I think improves the user experience a lot. For example, in order to access the settings in iOS 6, you'd have to tap on the bottom right corner to bring up the settings. But in iOS 7, all you do is hit the little information button, and everything is there much cleaner. You will also note that there is a menu bar on the bottom which allows you to access certain functions that were a lot harder to access in iOS 6. The Photos app looks a lot different. Let's go ahead and launch it and take a look. In iOS 7, we have a new feature called Moments. This will organize your photos into set dates, times, and locations, which makes it a lot easier to rummage through your gallery and find the photo you want to see. Rather, in iOS 6, we have the same unified type of photo experience that we've had since the first iPhone. Weather looks so much better in iOS 7 than it does in iOS 6. Let's go ahead and launch it to take a look. First of all, you'll note that iOS 7 now animates certain things. For example, in iOS 7, the clouds are now animated and you could see them moving by. But in iOS 6, everything is static. iOS 7 also displays your hourly forecast on the same screen than it does your 7-day forecast. Rather, in iOS 6, you would have to tap on the little icon to bring up your hourly. I can also pinch out in iOS 7 and it'll show me every city that I currently have open in my weather app. And you'll note the animations still work, even in this view. Now there's something interesting about Newsstand. First, now you can put it in a folder, and now of course there's no more wood. Also on iOS 6, it launched in a more kind of sub-app, but now in iOS 7, it launches in a complete full app. Now I have to say, Apple completely changed the way Game Center looks. Before you would get more of a felt type look, but in iOS 7 now it's more bubbles with statistics, but the same basic menu options are still on the bottom. FaceTime in iOS 7 looks very similar to the phone, so there's no point in showing you that. But Safari is something completely different. The overall interface is what I really like about it. Now you have a unified bar for both entering your URL address as well as doing a Google search. In iOS 7, you had a separate one for your URL and your search. On the bottom here, all the functions are the same, but in iOS 7 they look a bit different. What I really like about Safari in iOS 7 is the ability to navigate through tabs. So let's go ahead and make a new tab here. We'll type in a simple address, and you'll note that in iOS 7, whenever I bring up the URL bar, it'll bring up my bookmarks that I have on my Mac. So let's go ahead and make a new tab with iCloud in it. And we'll launch it on here. Now let's bring up the tab switcher in iOS 7. The button is located in the same exact spot and only looks slightly different. But now in iOS 7 you could see the way you get tab previews. It looks much nicer. Now let's jump into music for a second. Go ahead and open it up. The icons look very similar. And you can see the layout in iOS 7 looks so much nicer. I like it a lot better than in iOS 6. In iOS 7 things are organized much better than they were in iOS 6. In iOS 6 I'm looking at all the songs by Knife Party and it's not organized by album. However, in 7 it gives me the album cover, details about the album, as well as the songs listed in the album. Scrolling through my music is also a lot nicer. For example, in iOS 6, when I scroll, I only saw the name of the artist. I didn't get any previews or anything like that. But in iOS 7, I can see album previews by that artist. The other key feature in iOS 7 is the new iTunes Radio. But I will go through that in a separate video as this is just for the major UI improvements in iOS 7. So that is just a really quick overview of what the UI looks like in iOS 7 as opposed to iOS 6. Now you should have an understanding of what really the differences are between the graphics and the aesthetics of iOS 7 versus iOS 6. The layout of the application is exactly the same or pretty close to the same, but the feel of it, as well as the look of it, looks much nicer and much more aesthetically pleasing in iOS 7 than it does in iOS 6. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to favorite, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.